Tom raised his champagne glass at the holiday party, that familiar smirk spreading across his face. The conference room buzzed with tired employees clutching paper plates of catered sandwiches. "No Christmas bonuses this year, folks. Tough times, you know how it is," he announced with fake sympathy. The room deflated. I watched my coworkers' faces fall. Again, we heard this speech for 8 straight years. Always the same excuse. Always the same disappointment. But then something different happened. Tom turned to speak with Jake, our top salesman, his voice carrying across the quiet room. "Aspen's gonna be incredible this year," he laughed, adjusting his expensive watch. "First-class flights, 5-star resort. The wife's already picked out new ski gear." My chest tightened. My nails dug into my palms as I processed what I just heard. 8 years of no money for bonuses, yet somehow there was plenty for luxury vacations. The anger that had been simmering inside me for years suddenly boiled over. I forced my face to stay neutral, but inside I was screaming. Something was very, very wrong here. I glanced around the room at my exhausted coworkers, still believing his lies. They had no idea what I was about to discover. My name is Paige Turner, and for 8 years I'd been the backbone of this branch. As office manager, I handled everything: late-night emergencies, weekend crises, holidays spent answering Tom's urgent emails about problems that could wait until Monday. I believed in loyalty. I thought hard work eventually paid off. When Tom told us there was no money for bonuses, I trusted him. We all did. But sitting in that conference room, watching him brag about expensive vacations while we struggled to pay for Christmas gifts, something clicked. The math didn't add up. Our sales numbers were strong. I saw the reports every month. Revenue had actually increased over the past few years, not decreased. So where was all that money going? I'd sacrificed so much for this company. Missed my daughter's school plays for Tom's meetings, skipped family dinners to fix his mistakes, worked through illnesses because he said the branch couldn't function without me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Tom drove a brand new BMW. His wife wore designer clothes to every company event. Their house was featured in the local newspaper's luxury homes section. Meanwhile, my coworkers and I struggled with old cars and tight budgets, believing we were all in this together. Back at the office after New Year's, I started paying closer attention to conversations around me. During lunch breaks, I heard whispers that made my stomach turn. "Revenue's been strong all year," muttered Frank from accounting, stirring his instant coffee. "Best numbers we've had in 5 years, actually." My coworker Kelly nodded, lowering her voice. "My cousin works at the downtown branch. They got bonuses. Big ones." I kept my face neutral, but my mind raced. Other branches were getting bonuses, with supposedly the same tough times affecting the whole company. I started taking notes in my planner, disguising them as daily tasks: revenue numbers, dates, casual comments from coworkers. A pattern was emerging, and it wasn't pretty. The pieces were starting to fit together, but I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence. That's when everything changed. I was walking past the break room, heading to the supply closet, when I heard Tom's voice echoing from inside. He was on speakerphone, and what I heard next made my blood freeze. His wife's voice was crystal clear, and her words would haunt me forever. My hands shook as I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear every word of their conversation. Tom's laughter filled the break room as I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. "Yeah, they bought it again this year," he chuckled into the phone. "Hook, line, and sinker." His wife's voice crackled through the speaker, dripping with amusement. "I still can't believe your staff fell for that bonus thing again. Honestly, Tom, our new kitchen renovation is practically paid for by their stupidity." They both erupted in laughter. Cold, cruel laughter that made my stomach lurch. 8 years running, Tom boasted. Same sob story about tough times, and they eat it up every single year. Meanwhile, we're living like kings. "Don't forget the Aspen trip," his wife added, "and the new car payments. All thanks to your brilliant little scheme." I gripped the doorframe so hard my knuckles went white. My legs felt like jelly, but I couldn't move. I had to hear everything. "The best part?" Tom continued. "They actually work harder when they think times are tough. Paige practically lives here now, thinking she's helping the company survive." My name. He'd said my name. The woman who'd sacrificed everything for this job, and he was laughing about it with his wife like I was some kind of joke. The next morning, I walked into work with a smile plastered on my face. Every muscle in my body was tense, but I couldn't let Tom know what I'd heard. "Morning, Tom," I said cheerfully, placing his coffee on his desk, just like I had every day for 8 years. He looked up with that same condescending smile. "Morning, Paige. Ready for another productive day?" If only he knew what was really about to be productive. Inside, my heart hammered against my ribs. Every time he smirked at me, I heard his wife's voice echoing in my head, practically paid for by their stupidity. Every casual comment he made felt like another knife in my back. But I had to be smart about this. Acting on emotion would get me nowhere. Or worse, fired without any justice for my coworkers. During my lunch break, I started making a plan. I needed documentation, evidence, proof that would be impossible to deny or explain away. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I stayed late. Tom never questioned my overtime. He was used to me working late for free. But tonight, I wasn't working for him. I was working against him. My hands trembled as I unlocked the filing cabinet where financial reports were stored. The paper trail had to be somewhere. The office felt eerily quiet as I rifled through files in the dim light of my desk lamp. My heart raced every time I heard a sound from the parking lot, terrified Tom might return. Finally, I found what I was looking for: archived financial reports from the past 5 years. My hands shook as I spread them across my desk, comparing numbers and looking for patterns. There it was, clear as day. Every December, like clockwork, there was a line item labeled Management Incentive Program. The amounts were substantial, easily enough to cover generous bonuses for the entire staff, but we'd never seen a penny of it. I cross-referenced the amounts with our department's performance metrics. Every year, we'd been told there was no money for bonuses. Our branch had actually exceeded targets. We were one of the most profitable locations in the company. My printer seemed impossibly loud in the silent office as I made copies of everything. Each page felt like another piece of evidence in what was clearly a massive theft. I slipped the copies into a folder marked Office Supplies, innocent enough that Tom wouldn't question it if he saw it on my desk. But documents weren't enough. I needed witnesses, people who could corroborate the pattern of lies and broken promises. The hardest part would be getting my coworkers to speak up without putting their jobs at risk. Over the next few days, I had careful, quiet conversations with my coworkers. I started with Kelly, who'd mentioned her cousin's bonus during lunch. "Can I ask you something confidential?" I whispered during her coffee break. Her eyes widened with curiosity. "Of course." "How long has this no bonus thing been going on?" Kelly's face darkened. "Since Tom took over. Before him, old Mr. Williams gave us bonuses every Christmas. Good ones, too. Enough to actually help with holiday expenses." I felt my suspicions confirmed. "Do you remember how Tom explained it when the bonuses stopped?" "Same story every year," she sighed. "Tough economic times, company belt tightening, maybe next year will be better." I had similar conversations with Frank, our accountant, and several others. The pattern was identical. Tom had systematically eliminated bonuses while feeding us the same lies year after year. But when I hinted at taking action, fear crept into their voices. "Please don't use my name if you do anything," Kelly begged. "I can't afford to lose this job." Frank nodded nervously. "I've got 2 kids in college. I can't rock the boat." I understood their fear, but someone had to speak up. Someone had to be brave enough to challenge Tom's corruption. I spent hours crafting an email to our regional HR manager, Patricia Wells. I attached copies of all the financial documents I'd found, along with a detailed timeline of Tom's lies about bonuses. My finger hovered over the send button for 10 full minutes. Once I sent this, there was no going back. I clicked send. The next day, Patricia called me directly. Her voice was sickeningly sweet, the kind of fake concern that immediately put me on edge. "Paige, I received your email. These are some very serious accusations you're making." "They're not accusations," I replied firmly. "They're facts backed up by documentation." "Well, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Tom's been with the company for 12 years. He has an excellent track record." My heart sank. "So you're not going to investigate?" "I'll look into it, of course, but I need you to be very careful about making claims like this. False accusations can have serious consequences for your career." The threat was barely veiled. Patricia was protecting Tom, not the employees he'd been stealing from. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot, fighting back tears of frustration. The system was rigged to protect people like Tom while silencing people like me. But I wasn't giving up. If regional HR wouldn't listen, I'd find someone who would. That night, I researched corporate headquarters contacts until my eyes burned. I found the direct email for the VP of Human Resources, Michael Rodriguez, and spent hours crafting a comprehensive report. I included everything: the financial documents, the timeline of lies, quotes from coworkers, without names to protect them, and Patricia's dismissive response to my initial report. My hands trembled as I attached file after file. This was my last shot at justice. "Your move," I whispered as I hit send at 11:47 p.m. I barely slept that night, checking my phone every hour for a response. Had I made a huge mistake? Would this end my career? The next morning, I dragged myself to work on 3 hours of sleep, my nerves frayed and my stomach in knots. Then, at 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender, Michael Rodriguez, VP Human Resources, Corporate Headquarters. The subject line, Urgent investigation required. Branch manager misconduct. My heart nearly stopped as I opened the message. "Dear Miss Turner, thank you for bringing this serious matter to our attention. An internal audit team will be dispatched to your location immediately. Please keep this communication confidential until our investigation is complete. Your courage in reporting this matter is commendable." I stared at the screen, hardly believing what I was reading. Headquarters was taking this seriously. Someone was finally going to hold Tom accountable. I kept my face perfectly neutral as I deleted the email and slipped my phone back into my desk drawer. Across the office, Tom was sipping his morning coffee, completely oblivious to the storm heading his way. "Productive morning, Paige?" he called out with his usual condescending tone. "Very productive," I replied, and for the first time in years, I meant it. The next few hours crawled by. I jumped every time the phone rang, wondering if headquarters was calling with updates. I scrutinized every email, looking for signs that the audit team was mobilizing. Then, at 2:30 p.m., 3 people in dark suits walked through our front door. They approached the reception desk with briefcases and official-looking clipboards. "Good afternoon," the lead investigator announced to the room. "We're from corporate headquarters. We're here to conduct a surprise branch audit." The office fell silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Tom's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe even fear. But he quickly recovered, plastering on his most charming smile. "Of course," he said. He's standing and straightening his tie. "Anything you need, I'm happy to help. Always glad to see corporate taking an interest in our operation." But I noticed his hands shaking slightly as he gestured toward his office. The confident mask was already starting to slip. The audit team spread throughout the office like detectives at a crime scene. They requested files, interviewed staff members, and examined financial records with the kind of thorough attention Tom clearly wasn't expecting. From my desk, I watched him pace nervously behind his glass office walls. Every few minutes, he'd smooth down his hair or adjust his tie, nervous habits I'd never seen before in 8 years of working for him. Tom seemed stressed. Kelly whispered as she passed my desk. I nodded, fighting to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. Big audits can be overwhelming. One of the auditors approached my desk. "Miss Turner, could we speak with you privately?" My heart hammered as I followed her to an empty conference room. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. "We understand you may have some insights into branch operations," she said, opening a notepad. I took a deep breath and told her everything. The overheard phone call, the missing bonuses, the financial documents I'd discovered. She took notes furiously, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "Do you have copies of those financial reports?" she asked. I pulled out my office supplies folder and handed over every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Her eyebrows raised as she flipped through the documents. "This is extremely thorough. Thank you for your diligence." Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see Tom's anxiety escalating. He kept checking his watch, straightening papers on his desk, and making unnecessary phone calls, anything to look busy and important. When I returned to my desk, he immediately intercepted me. "What did they want to know?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "Just routine questions about office procedures," I lied smoothly. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded and retreated to his office. Over the next hour, I watched the audit team work methodically through financial records. They'd spread documents across the conference table like pieces of a puzzle, occasionally pointing at specific numbers and whispering to each other. Tom's door remained closed, but I could see him through the glass, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. His phone rang several times, but he let it go to voicemail, highly unusual for someone who normally answered on the first ring. Around 4 p.m., one of the auditors knocked on Tom's door. They had a brief conversation before Tom reluctantly handed over a stack of files from his locked cabinet. As the auditor walked away with the documents, Tom slumped into his chair and buried his face in his hands. The confidence he'd displayed that morning was completely gone. The auditors worked late into the evening, long after most staff had gone home. I volunteered to stay and help with anything they needed, which gave me a front-row seat to their investigation. They'd called several employees back for follow-up interviews. Each conversation seemed to confirm what I'd reported: years of broken promises about bonuses, always with the same excuses about financial hardship. Frank emerged from one interview looking shaken. "They asked me to estimate how much I would have earned in bonuses over the past 8 years, he whispered. "When I calculated it out, Paige, we're talking about thousands of dollars per person." The magnitude of Tom's theft was becoming clear. 8 years of stolen bonuses, multiplied by dozens of employees, he'd robbed us of hundreds of thousands of dollars in total. Meanwhile, Tom had barely left his office all day. When he did venture out, his usual swagger was replaced by hunched shoulders and nervous glances. At 7 p.m., the lead auditor approached his door again. This time, their conversation lasted nearly an hour. Through the glass, I could see Tom gesturing frantically, clearly trying to explain something. When the auditor finally left his office, Tom's face was pale and his hands were visibly shaking. I had a feeling they'd found exactly what they were looking for. The next morning brought a new level of tension. Tom arrived late, which was unprecedented. He was usually the first one in the office, eager to micromanage everyone's morning routine. The audit team had requested specific financial records dating back to Tom's first year as manager. They'd found email chains that apparently included his direct approval for management incentive payments. From my desk, I could hear raised voices coming from the conference room where the auditors were working. One voice in particular, a female auditor, sounded incredulous. "These payments went directly into your personal account, Mr. Bailey," she said loudly enough for half the office to hear. "Every December, like clockwork. The amounts match exactly what should have been distributed as employee bonuses." Tom's response was too quiet to make out, but his body language spoke volumes. Through the glass walls, I could see him slumped in his chair, no longer even attempting to project confidence. The smoking gun had been found, and everyone in the office knew it. Kelly caught my eye from across the room and raised her eyebrows questioningly. I gave her the slightest nod, and her face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. Justice was finally within reach. By lunchtime, Tom's facade was crumbling completely. When the auditors asked him to explain the discrepancy between the approved bonus funds and the money that actually reached employees, he started pointing fingers. "There must be an accounting error," he stammered, his voice carrying across the office. "You should check with the finance department. Maybe they can explain what happened to those funds." But the lead auditor's response was swift and devastating. "Mr. Bailey, every single approval for these payments has your electronic signature. The money was transferred directly to accounts under your control." Tom's face flushed red. I could see him losing his temper, his hands clenched into fists on the conference table. Several coworkers had stopped pretending to work and were openly watching the drama unfold. The tension in the office was thick enough to cut with a knife. "This is ridiculous." Tom's voice rose to a near shout. "I've been with this company for 12 years. My record speaks for itself. Yes, it does, the auditor replied calmly. And right now it's speaking very clearly about financial misconduct. I felt a surge of satisfaction watching Tom's arrogance finally catch up with him. For 8 years, he'd treated us like fools. Now he was the one looking foolish. Tom's composure finally snapped completely. He stormed out of the conference room and into the main office area, his face twisted with rage. You people are unbelievable, he shouted at the room full of stunned employees. You think you deserve bonuses? You think this company owes you something extra just for doing your jobs? The office fell dead silent. Everyone stared at him in shock. His mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the contempt he'd always felt for us. I've carried this branch on my back for years, he continued, his voice echoing off the walls. Without my leadership, this place would have collapsed. And this is how you repay me? By calling corporate to investigate me like some kind of criminal? One of the auditors had followed him out of the conference room and was calmly taking notes on everything he said. Tom didn't seem to notice or care. You're all a bunch of ungrateful idiots if you think. Mr. Bailey, the auditor interrupted firmly, I think you should stop talking now. But Tom was beyond reason. Years of living a lie had finally caught up with him, and he was imploding in front of everyone he'd deceived. The show was far from over. The lead auditor stepped forward, her voice cutting through Tom's ranting with professional authority. Mr. Bailey, effective immediately, you are suspended from your position pending the completion of our investigation. Gasps rippled through the office. Even though we'd all sensed this was coming, hearing it officially announced sent shockwaves through the room. Tom's face went from red to white in seconds. You can't do this to me, he sputtered. I have rights. I have a contract. You also have a pattern of financial misconduct that violates multiple company policies. The auditor replied calmly. Security will escort you out while you gather your personal belongings. 2 security guards appeared as if from nowhere. Apparently, corporate had planned for this possibility. Tom looked around the room desperately, as if searching for allies or support. But every face he saw reflected the same thing, relief that his reign of deception was finally ending. This is a mistake, he protested as the guards flanked him. When corporate realizes what they're losing, you'll all be sorry. But his threats rang hollow now. The man who'd controlled our lives for 8 years was being led away like a common criminal. The era of Tom Bailey was finally coming to an end. The walk of shame was everything I'd imagined it would be. Tom, flanked by security guards, was escorted through the office toward the exit. His face was a mixture of rage, humiliation, and disbelief. He tried to maintain some dignity, walking with his head held high, but the effect was ruined by his obvious desperation. As he passed my desk, he shot me a look of pure hatred. Somehow, he'd figured out I was behind his downfall. I met his gaze steadily, no longer afraid of his power or his temper. He was just a sad, corrupt man who'd finally been caught. The office remained completely silent until the door closed behind him. Then, like air being released from a balloon, everyone seemed to exhale at once. Is it really over? Kelly whispered. Before I could answer, the lead auditor approached my desk. Miss Turner, could we speak with you privately once more? My heart raced as I followed her to the conference room. Had I done something wrong? Was there more trouble ahead? But when she closed the door and turned to face me, she was smiling. I want to thank you personally, she said. Your courage in reporting this situation probably saved this company hundreds of thousands of dollars. You should be proud of what you've accomplished. For the first time in weeks, I felt tears of relief instead of frustration. The next morning felt surreal. For the first time in 8 years, Tom's office stood empty. The auditors had finished their work and returned to headquarters, leaving behind a sense of anticipation that hung over the entire office. Around 10 a.m., we received an email asking all staff to gather in the conference room for an important announcement. My stomach fluttered with nervous energy as we filed in. The same lead auditor who'd handled Tom's investigation stood at the front of the room, but now she was smiling. Good morning, everyone. I have some news that I think you'll want to hear. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Our investigation has confirmed that bonus payments totaling approximately $400,000 were improperly diverted over the past 8 years. Corporate headquarters has approved the immediate reinstatement of all bonuses, retroactively, for the past 3 years. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Several people looked like they were about to cry. That means each of you will be receiving checks for the bonuses you should have gotten, plus interest. She continued. The payments will be processed within the next 2 weeks. Frank was the first to speak up. How much are we talking about? The auditor smiled. Individual amounts will vary based on position and tenure, but we're looking at roughly $3,000 to $8,000 per person. The room erupted in cheers and applause. After 8 years of believing there was no money for bonuses, we were suddenly looking at substantial payouts that would change many of our lives. Kelly grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. Paige, do you know what this means? I can finally fix my car. I can buy my kids decent Christmas presents. Similar conversations were happening all around the room. Frank was calculating how much he could put toward his daughter's college tuition. Others were talking about long overdue home repairs, medical bills they could finally pay, or simply having an emergency fund for the first time in years. But the auditor wasn't finished with her announcements. There's one more thing, she said, raising her hand for quiet. The person primarily responsible for bringing this misconduct to light was Paige Turner. All eyes turned to me, and I felt my cheeks burning with embarrassment and pride. Without her diligence and courage, this theft might have continued indefinitely. You all owe her a debt of gratitude. The applause that followed was thunderous. My coworkers, people I'd worked alongside for years, were cheering for me like I was some kind of hero. For a moment, I felt overwhelmed by the recognition. Then Frank started a chant. Paige, Paige, Paige. Soon the entire room was chanting my name. I'd never felt so appreciated in my entire career. As the celebration died down, the auditor made one final announcement that nobody saw coming. Obviously, we'll need a new branch manager, she said. Corporate has asked me to gauge interest in promoting from within. The room fell silent again. We'd all been so focused on getting our bonuses back that none of us had thought about who would replace Tom. Paige, the auditor continued, turning to me directly. Given your intimate knowledge of branch operations and your demonstrated integrity, headquarters would like to offer you the position. My mouth fell open. Branch manager? Me? You don't have to answer right now, she said quickly, but we'd like you to consider it. The salary increase would be substantial, and you'd have full authority to run this branch according to corporate standards, which means no more stolen bonuses. I looked around the room at my coworkers' faces. They were nodding encouragingly, smiling with genuine support. Think about it over the weekend, the auditor suggested. Let us know Monday morning. As everyone filed out of the conference room, my head was spinning. 24 hours ago, I was just an office manager trying to expose corruption. Now I was being offered Tom's job. The irony was almost too perfect to believe. That weekend, I couldn't think about anything else. Becoming branch manager would mean taking on Tom's responsibilities, but it would also mean protecting my coworkers from ever experiencing his kind of abuse again. I thought about all the late nights I'd worked for Tom, all the times he'd taken credit for my ideas, all the promises he'd broken. Now I had the chance to create the kind of workplace I'd always wished for. Saturday evening, I called my sister to talk through the decision. Are you kidding me? She laughed when I explained the situation. Paige, you practically ran that place already. The only difference is now you'll get paid properly and have the authority to make real changes. She was right. I'd been doing management-level work for years without the title or compensation. Sunday morning, I made my decision. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and spoke the words out loud. It's time to step up. I'd spent 8 years being Tom's safety net, cleaning up his mistakes and covering for his incompetence. Now I could use that knowledge to build something better. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. I arrived at work early Monday morning before anyone else. I wanted a few minutes alone in the office to mentally prepare for what was about to be a life-changing conversation. When the auditor called at 9 a.m., I was ready. I'll take the position, I said without hesitation, And I promise you, this branch will never experience anything like Tom's misconduct again." "Excellent," she replied. "We'll have the paperwork ready for you to sign this afternoon. Your promotion will be effective immediately." An hour later, I stood in front of my coworkers, my future employees, with my heart pounding but my voice steady. "I've accepted the branch manager position," I announced. "I know this transition might feel strange, but I want you to know that things are going to be different around here." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Kelly jumped up and hugged me. Frank gave me a thumbs up from across the room. "No more lies about bonuses," I continued when the noise died down. "No more broken promises. No more feeling like your hard work goes unnoticed or unappreciated." For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The office felt different already. Lighter, more hopeful, more honest. Over the next few weeks, news of Tom's downfall spread throughout the company. I heard through the corporate grapevine that he'd been permanently banned from any management positions within the organization. His termination was officially listed as gross misconduct involving financial irregularities, corporate speak for theft. His reputation in the industry was completely destroyed. Some of my coworkers occasionally brought up updates they'd heard about Tom. He'd apparently had to sell his expensive car and downsize his house. The luxury lifestyle he'd funded with our stolen bonuses was crumbling around him. Kelly mentioned seeing his wife at the grocery store, looking stressed and arguing with someone on her phone about overdue bills. "I almost feel sorry for her," Kelly said. "She probably didn't know where the money was really coming from." But I remembered that phone call I'd overheard, where she'd laughed about our stupidity paying for their kitchen renovation. She'd known exactly what was happening. They'd both gotten what they deserved. Meanwhile, our branch was thriving under new management. Morale was higher than it had been in years, productivity was up, and for the first time, people actually looked forward to coming to work. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office, Tom's former office, watching my team cash their first legitimate bonus checks in 8 years. The sight filled me with more satisfaction than any paycheck I'd ever received. Through my window, I could see Kelly in the break room, showing pictures of the vacation she was finally able to afford. Frank was at his desk, smiling as he made what I knew was a call to his daughter about covering her next semester's tuition. These were good people who'd been taken advantage of by someone they trusted. But they'd survived, and now they were thriving. Tom Bailey was rarely mentioned anymore, except occasionally as a cautionary tale, or the punchline to a joke about workplace corruption. As I prepared to leave for the day, I thought about that phone call I'd overheard 8 months ago, the conversation that had changed everything. If I hadn't been walking past the break room at exactly the right moment, Tom might still be stealing from us. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives happen by pure chance. I gathered my things and headed for the door, pausing to look back at the bustling office one more time. To anyone watching, I wanted to say this. Some people count on you staying quiet about their wrongdoing. They count on your fear, your loyalty, your unwillingness to rock the boat. Don't let them.